Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everybody out there today. My name is Desi. I'm the Marketing Communications Manager here at Toon Animation, and I'm very happy to introduce you to Marc-André. As most of you know Marc-André already, probably, he's our product manager and really our guru here at Toon Boom. Today's an exciting day because we're about to reveal to you some cool and neat features in Storyboard Pro version 5. So this is our first major release in the last 2.5 years or so. We have been releasing patch versions of Storyboard Pro, but this is, a great new, exciting release, and we really hope that you enjoy it as much as we have in the last couple of weeks and months. We will be releasing next week, but we decided to give you a little bit of a sneak peek today with Marc-André. We'll try to reserve some time for some questions towards the end of the webinar. But again, we're going to be a little bit pressed for time, and we will have another webinar next week on Storyboard Pro version 5. So if we don't get to your question this week, we'll definitely get to your question next week. So with no further ado, I introduce you Marc-André.
Hi everyone, thank you for joining us in such large numbers today, and thanks Desi for that. I guess that's the biggest biggest introduction I've ever had so far. So today I'll be giving you a sneak peek of the new release of Storyboard Pro that's coming very, very soon, Storyboard Pro 5. I won't be showing you all the new features. I don't think we will have time to show you everything yet. This is just a sneak peek. But we'll have another webinar next week where I can show you more of the features. And since we might not have time to answer all of your questions today, we will maybe use the next one to to answer all the questions we can't answer today. All right, so let's start Storyboard Pro. So the first thing you'll see, well, it's a splash screen for sure, when you start Storyboard Pro is that we have given Storyboard Pro the same look that we have in Harmony. So it's now a dark style interface. It's a little bit easier on the eyes, lets you concentrate more on the art and less on the interface around it. Though for those of you that's like the light interface, it's still available in the preferences, so you can still get it from there. Apart from that, the welcome screen is pretty much the same. You have your project name, so this is where you name the project you're going to be working on. This is the project, how the project will be named on your file system or on the server you're saving it to. Then I have the project title, which will be used when you're printing the PDF, the subtitle as well, printing the PDF, or when doing some various exports. And then we have the camera size preset. So this preset allows you to select from a list of predefined presets. It sets the resolution of the camera, but also the frame rate and the field of view or the alignment of the camera. And you'll notice when I go through the list here, I have a preset here called HDTV 1080p 23.976. This means that the new version of Storyboard Pro will allow you to use a decimal values in your frame rate. This is a non-dropped frame rate, similar to what you use in Premiere or Final Cut Pro. So you will now be able to move from storyboard all the way to your editing suite in post or for refining your animatics, and you won't have any issues with syncing sound to your images. Everything will be in sync from one end to the other end of your production. Like the previous welcome screen, we have the recent project list here. So any project I opened recently is available from here. I can open a project by clicking on the Open Project button here, and I can watch some video tutorials by clicking here. This will launch a web browser to our tutorial section. And if you need help, want to contact support, I can click here. This will go on our website in the support section. So let me create the project. So when we look, the first thing we see when I start and you look at the main interface, it's pretty similar to what the interface was like in the previous version. Apart from the dark UI, you might notice that the buttons have changed a little bit. We've changed the drawings on them. We've made them work with the dark UI, but you've got the same toolbars. I've got my file toolbar here where I can create, open, save as a project. I've got my my edit toolbar here to cut, copy, paste, delete, and also the undo. Now, one thing that a lot of you might not know about the undo is that, I don't know why my webinar screen still keeps popping. So is that the undo And before I go on, I really need to apologize for my poor drawing ability. I know the software by heart. I know everything there is to know about the software, but I'm not that good at drawing. So I'll be drawing very simple trees and stickmans and some clouds, and if you're lucky, maybe even a sun. So I've got the undo buttons here, and so this button allows me to undo and redo whatever I do. And next to the button, there's a small button here that opens the history. So you can see all the operations. Actually, this lists the 50 last operations that you've done. You can list more if you want through the preferences. You can change that setting to 200, 1,000, whatever value you want. The higher value, the more RAM it will take to preserve all the operations, whole history. But yeah, if you ever need to go back in your history, you can just click on the small arrow that points down next to the undo button, and you will see the history. And same thing for the redo if you want to see the history. Next up, we have the workspace toolbar, which is the same toolbar that we had in the past. I'll be mostly working in the drawing workspace today. There's also the timeline workspace, which is very, very similar to that one, except it has a timeline at the bottom here. I've got my overview workspace, my horizontal workspace. I even have my 3D workspace, and I have the zoom in and zoom out buttons right here. Now, one change that we made in this version is that we've changed the order of the buttons here. I hope this won't confuse too many people, but the zoom is on the right side, zoom in is on the right side, and zoom out is on the left side. This is to make sure it stays consistent with the other UI buttons that allows you to zoom in and out. For example, in the overview workspace here, I have a slider that allows me to make my UI, my panel bigger or smaller. It grows on the right and it makes it smaller on the left. So this is why we changed that here. Then I have my storyboard toolbar, which I can use to create panels, create scene, create sequences, duplicate my panels, delete my panels, add transition the same way I did in the past. I've got my navigation toolbar that I'll show you why we have this in the workspace now, and I have my playback toolbar, my onion skin toolbar, my tools toolbar, and my layer toolbar. The main toolbar that you'll be using is the toolbar to change the tool that you're using in the software, and the storyboard toolbar to add panels, delete panels, and manage the panels that you have in your project. And right here we have, well, I modified my layout a little bit. I added some extra windows. There you go. I removed them. I've got my panel view like in the past that has information related to the selected panels. I've got my storyboard panel that shows me if I have a script imported, I will be able to see the script here, but it will also list all the scenes that I have, how many scenes, how many panels, how many transitions, what's the duration of my current project. And I've got my tool properties view, which is the view that I use the most, which shows you all the properties and all the operations that you can do with the selected tool. For drawing, I'll mostly be using the vector brush tool myself because it's easier for me to draw. For those of you that are already familiar with the vector drawing tool inside Storyboard Pro, when you draw with that tool, every stroke, even though they're all the same color, are all individual strokes. So I can move them, rotate them, scale them. And since they're vector, even if I scale them very, very big or I zoom in very closely, it's always going to be a very sharp line. You won't lose any quality. When I'm zooming in and out, I'm always using the 1 and the 2 key on my keyboard, 1 to zoom out, 2 to zoom in. So the key order is the same as the order of the buttons here in my workspace. Another neat feature about the vector technology that we're using is that it's really easy to select strokes and change the color. So if I want to change the color of my tree here, I can really just select them, change the color using my mixer here, or just select the color at the bottom. But another cool feature is the select by color. So if I've drawn a lot of strokes using the same color inside the panel, I can use this tool to click on one of the vectors that uses this color, and this will select all the vectors that have the same color, and I can recolor them or move them or delete them. Same thing that I would be able to do if I had the select tool selected. Now the cutter tool, when I select something with the select tool, it selects the whole stroke. If I want to select a portion of a stroke, I will use the cutter tool to select a portion of the strokes like this. or I can use the cutter tool to cut or clean up my drawing. So when I draw a stroke with the cutter tool over a vector line, this erases the vector line all the way to the next intersection. So I can use that to clean up my, and actually I drew my tree on 2 separate layers here, like, so let me just undo a couple of steps here. I'll select my vectors, I cut them, and I'll go to my BG layer and I'll paste. Now to make sure I don't do that again, I'll turn on the light table here so that when I select another layer, it grays out or fades the other layers, so I make sure I'm drawing on the right layer. So now I've done my tree and I just want to clean it up a little bit. There we go, like that, so it looks a little bit better. Come on. There we go. And now I want to add some color to my tree. Sometimes I will like to do this on a separate layer. So I'll just add another layer just under here. Right there, I'll call this the fill layer. And I'll take my brush tool. And I created a bitmap layer. So I will be using a hard shading brush to fill in my tree. Now the brush is a bit too small for me, so I'll press and hold the O key, and I'll click and drag to change the size of the brush. This is a very fast way to change the size of the brush. Now I'll be doing my color fill on that. I'll need a little bit of a brown color, smaller size to do the, ooh, that's way too small. There we go. To fill the trunk of my tree. Went a bit too high there. There we go. And then I want to do a little bit of shading. I'll take the soft shading brush and I'll shade the top of my tree here, adding a little bit of highlight and a bit of shadow behind. Now I drew this on 2 separate layers, and what I want to do is I want to manage those layers together. I don't want to have to turn off 2 layers to have to hide my background. I want to manage them together, so I'll group the layers together. So this is a new feature inside Storyboard Pro 5. I can now add groups to my panels, and the groups allows me to hide all the layers inside the group, lock all the layers inside the group, or even move all the layers using my transform tool inside the group. So I don't have to select all the layers individually. And for sure, I can rename my group to whatever I want. I'll call this the BG group. Another new feature inside Storyboard Pro is the sharing of drawing. So if I select a layer and I right-click the layer, I have a command called shared drawing. And when I use this command on a layer, a small star asterisk appears in front of the name. This is to show me this is a shared layer. What is a shared layer? A shared layer is a layer that will be shared across multiple panels that can be reused in more than one panel. So if I make a change to the drawing, this will be reflected in all the panels that use this drawing as well. And I'll demonstrate that a little bit later. Now going back to my bitmap drawing tools, so we've done some improvements to the bitmap or the raster drawing tools that I'll try to demonstrate here. Is that, well, we've brought the same technology that we have in Harmony inside Storyboard Pro. So for example, if I take this very bland, or what's that shape? Right here, I open the advanced or the properties for that brush, and I draw something. We zoom in on it a little bit. You see, this is just a shape that's being repeated. So this is a tip. So inside version 5 of Storyboard Pro, I can now have changed the tip of my brush. So I have a lot of tips that are predefined in the software, but you can also create your own and add them. So you can just create a small tip that you'll, a small square texture that you want to use with the software, and you can import it. But yeah, so when you're using a tip like this, you see it really repeats itself. You can change the spacing of that, but the very interesting features that we have now is the randomness. So you can add some random angle to it, some random spacing, some random size as well. And right away, if I draw again, it gives me a lot more interesting brush. I can also add some randomness. I'll just make sure I control the flow with the pressure of my Wacom pen. So the harder I press, or the softer I press, the lighter the drawings are. But I can also add some randomness to the flow and the opacity, so it gives you something that's a little bit more natural. And the next thing that we have also is the dual tip. So I can combine two tips or use two tips together to cut one tip with the other tip. So I select this tip here, and this tip is set to multiply, so it will actually cut the other tip. So I'll take another tip here. I'll draw it, and right there I have a lot more interesting brush that I had in the past. So from a very simple tip, you can really create a lot more natural looking or very funky looking brushes. Now, another thing that's new inside the raster drawing tools is that I can now also use the paint tool. So let's say I'll add a cloud to my scene here. So I'll just draw a cloud here. And this is a raster layer, and I want to fill my cloud. I can actually select a color here, and I'll select just a bright color, and I'll fill in the cloud using the paint tool. And even though this was a raster layer, let me undo, and there was some anti-aliasing here. When I fill it, it goes under the anti-aliasing and it fills it a little bit further. So you don't see any crunchiness around the edges. So that's pretty cool. So now I'm ready to continue working on my board here. I'll have a character that will be on the A layer, and oops, I'll draw the character with black color here. And maybe it's a bit big like this, okay. And yes, it's a stick figure because that's the only thing I'm able to draw. And now I'll have my character walking forward. But before I go on, I'll add some dialogue. Hey, look at the nice apple tree. And then an action, Bob walking to the tree. There we go. And now what I'll do is I'll duplicate my panel. And on my new panel, I'll just erase the dialogue and the action notes because I just want them on my first panel. And now I'll take my character. I'll turn on the light table so I'm sure I'm working on the right layer. I'll select my character. I'll turn on the onion skin. And I'll take my character and I'll move him forward. I'll duplicate my panel again, move the character forward, duplicate the panel, and he's walking all the way to the tree. And now he's jumping in the tree, so I'll just quickly draw the character jumping into the tree. Ooh, that's a really small head right there. And there we go, he's now hanging in the tree. And now why did he jump in the tree? And this is the part that I always forget. He jumped in the tree because there were apples in the tree. So now I'll need to draw the apples. But in the past, if I made changes to a drawing after it's been duplicated, it would not be reflected on the other panels. But now that I shared this layer, everything that I do to this layer in this panel will also be reflected on all the other panels. So all the trees inside all the panels now have the apples in them. So it makes it a lot faster to make changes to your backgrounds without having to do copy paste between multiple panels. And you can even have one panel at the start of your project using the same drawing that's and a panel at the end of your project. And if at one point you need to make a modification to one of the drawings and you don't want the other ones to be have this change, you can actually unlink the drawing. And let's say I want to remove some of the apples here, so I'll just cover the apple with green. So only this panel will have this modification, the other panels will not. And you see that the asterisk disappeared on the layer there. Now just to go back to the bitmap drawing tools, since I'm not able to draw some really nice drawings, let me show you what our in-house artist, Geneviève Demers, has come up. So right here, let me turn off the onion skin. So we've got that's actually a welding gun for the sample project that we're working on. And we can see that the lighting here, or the fire coming out of the welding gun, was drawn on a bitmap layer. And she did a really nice job using the bitmap tool on that layer. Okay, so now I'm ready to add a little bit of camera to my scene. So I'll select the first panel here. I'll take my camera tool. I'll make my camera frame smaller. Now I start by adding some keyframes. So I have my camera toolbar that I've added to my layout. You can add a toolbar by just right-clicking any toolbar and selecting the toolbar from the list, or going in the Windows menus, toolbar, and selecting the toolbar you want to see. In this case, camera. So I'll add a keyframe at the start of this panel. And I want to have my camera follow the character all the way to when he's under the tree. So I'll go to that panel here. I'll add a camera keyframe here, and I'll move my camera right there on the character. Now the character is jumping in the tree. I'll add some keyframes again to just zoom in on the character inside that panel. And this is how you can very quickly create a camera move inside Storyboard Pro. So I actually have pretty much a complete scene now. The only thing missing is the cloud that's not moving. So let me go back to the first panel here with my beautiful pink cloud. So I'll select the cloud. I'll take the transform tool. You'll see that the transform tool is different now. You don't have a start frame transform tool and an end frame transform tool. There's just one transform tool. If I use the transform tool on my cloud without doing anything, this moves the cloud for the whole duration of the panel. It's a static move. If I want to animate the cloud, I'll need to turn on animation on this layer. So there's a little man here on the layer standing up. If I click on the little guy there, he starts running. This means that the layer is now animated. When I hit this button, this adds a keyframe at the current frame, at the current position, and then I can start animating it. So I want the cloud to go from left to right, and I'll animate the cloud just on this panel, and I'll spread the move afterwards. I'll go to the end of the panel. So I use from my navigation toolbar the last frame button to go to the last frame of my panel. I can animate or I can move the layer forward like this. Now this doesn't make sense because the cloud is above my tree. There we go, that makes a little bit more sense. So if I go now in my timeline, just to give you a better idea of what's going on. So I've got my cloud going from left to right in this panel. And I can add as many keys as I want on this transformation. I can rotate it, I can scale it. I can have more than just a start and an end keyframe to that movement. Let me undo that. Now I need to spread this to the other panels, so I'll select the layer. I'll go in the layer menu. I'll use the spread layer motion. I'll apply this to all the panels in the same scene. And now this has spread the motion of my cloud on all the panels. And I just changed the layer order on the first panel, so this is why the cloud appears above here. But that's not a problem because I can change the layer ordering, and my movement, my layer motion is still good. There you go, easy as that. Now if I want to make small adjustments or change the curve, I can also use the function editor. So if I click on the plus here in any window, or if I go in the Windows menu, I can select from here the function editor, which I can never find. There we go. And the function editor can either show you the camera or the layer motion. And this is the layer motion. I just want to work on the velocity for this one. And I will add a little bit of ease on it. Like this. So I select my key and I press and hold the, I'm using a Mac here, so I press and hold the Command Alt key. This stretches the ease in or ease out. Let me just resize this so I see a little bit more of it. There we go. And I can also use the values here to change the length of the ease in or the ease out. Like this. So I can do it from either using my mouse or by changing the values here. There we go. Now another thing that's new in Storyboard Pro 5 is we now have Qt scripting. And when I'm talking about scripting, I'm not talking about the script for your movie, for your TV episode. I'm talking about a script to automate some functions inside the software. So this is similar to the Qt scripting engine we have in Harmony, and it now allows you to automate some tasks. So we've did a couple of scripts here as examples that are bundled with the software. We've got the 3D report that will list all the 3D models that are inside the project. You have the search caption just to show you how you can search inside captions. Delete layers, so this will delete layer based on the name of the layer, for example. Delete hidden layers, so let's say you have a lot of layers on a lot of panels inside your project and you want to delete all the hidden layers because you don't use them anymore. Just select all the panels, run this script, and it will erase all the hidden layers on all the selected panels. Export camera, so this can be used to export the camera for using in Maya or After Effects and all that. And you can write your own, so look at those, and we have documentation online of all the functions that are available for you to automate some tasks. And if you're under support, if you have gold support, you can even ask for assistance when writing scripts inside Storyboard Pro. Now let me go a little bit into the 3D aspect of Storyboard Pro and what's new in this version of Storyboard Pro. So I'll add a new scene. And, well, the first thing that's new is that we support more format than we used to. So we now support Collada, and we now support as well Alembic, which is new. And we still support the old formats, well, not the old formats, but the formats we had in the past, FBX, OBJs, OSB, which is a format that we had a plugin to export from Maya, and also 3ds, though I don't use 3ds that often. So I'll just import some models that I already have templated inside my scene. So this is just a 3D room. And I'll log the room I'll log the layers so I don't accidentally select them. And the first thing you need to do when you're working in 3D is that you're not going to be working in the stage view. Because the stage view really shows you, you're not looking through the camera that's right here. So when I'm working on a storyboard, I always want to be looking through the camera because I want to see what I'm working on, what will be exported out, what will be rendered out. So I'll go into camera view. And when I have my camera tool selected, you'll notice that the manipulator for the camera have changed. I don't have the circle around the middle anymore to rotate on the X and the Y axis. When I have the camera tool selected, I can click anywhere in the camera view and rotate on the Y or the X axis or both at the same time. It makes it really easy to do some camera work. So to plan out, to block out the camera and what you want to do. The other thing that's new is that this little middle controller here, this little dot. If I click and I drag, this will move the camera at different speeds based on how far I drag from the center. This is because when you have a very large set and you want to move through the set, it's kind of long to just click and drag and click and drag and click and drag. Because I can still do that from the frame. So if I click and I drag the frame, this drags the frame by the amount of pixels that I drag the mouse. But if I do it from the middle, I can go very fast all the way to the end of the model and all the way to the other end of the model. Now let me just recenter my camera right there to my door. And the middle also can be used to move forward and backwards. So if I press the Alt key and I click on the middle and I drag up, this will move the camera backwards. If I drag forward or down, this will move the camera forward. So I can really manipulate my camera on all the axis X, Y, Z from just that middle controller here. And I can also rotate my camera on all the axes X and Y here. And if I want to go on the Z, I can just go to the corner to tilt my camera. So I'm ready to add a character inside my scene. Oh, and by the way, when I click and I drag on the frame around, if I press and hold the Alt key, it will do the same thing. If I drag, it will move the camera forward and backwards based on the amount of pixels that I drag the frame by. So I'm ready to import a model. So I have a template here with a model. This little armadillo is a bit big. Let me go back a little bit like this. I'll take the transform tool and I'll scale the character down a little bit. It's too big for me. There we go. And I'll rotate it. Now, one thing that's annoying when you're working with 3D is trying to get the feet of your 3D character on the ground. And you can eyeball it, move the character here. And then you want to have the character moving forward. You try to make him move forward, but then you have to go to another view. And it's a bit time consuming. So what we have is a new feature called Snap to Surface, Snap to 3D Surface. So when I enable that mode for the transform tool, so this is in the tool properties for the transform tool, if I click and drag my model, the pivot of the model, so I need to make sure the pivot of my model is at the right position, will snap to the surface that's under my mouse. So if I move the mouse around on the floor, you see the character goes backwards and forward, and I can even have him attached to the wall if I want to. I can even have the 3D model have its orientation change based on the surface, though I usually don't do that with this character because when I put him on the floor, he just lies down. So I turn off the rotation, and I move the character where I want. I take my camera tool, I move the camera where I want. I make sure I add a keyframe here, and then I'm ready to duplicate the panel or add a new panel to start blocking out the scene. So now I take my character and I'll move him forward. Maybe I'll add a little bit of rotation here, like this. And then I'll take my camera and I'll rotate my camera, maybe pull back a little bit, like that. And then I'll duplicate the panel again. I'll take my character, I make sure I turn off the rotation. I move the character there. I take my camera and I rotate the camera and maybe pull back a little bit more. And if I go in the timeline and I scrub through, see how fast this was to block out the scene. Maybe I should turn on the camera mask so we really see through the camera. And let's do a playback. There we go. And this is how fast it is to create a camera move and block out camera position and character position inside the 3D environment using this new mode. Now, another new tool that's very useful is that, let's say I want to draw an expression on my character, or I want to draw a prop on my character, and I always want to be able to draw to express exactly what I want inside the storyboard. Now, the thing is, when you're working with 3D, you're not facing your 2D layer anymore. So if I select a 2D layer, the layer is not facing my camera, so I cannot draw on it. I can go to my layer menu and say, align layer to camera. This will align the layer, and I'll be able to draw on the layer. Though the layer, I don't really control the depth the layer has. I'll have to go in my top view or in my stage view and move the layer forward or backward. So the easier way to draw something, I want to draw something on my character here. I think he should be wearing shorts. So I'll take my my tool here that's called Create Layer on Surface. And when I activate this tool, I have a red crosshair that appears. And you'll see that the crosshair shrinks as I go back in the 3D model and gets bigger if I'm closer. So this is similar to the Snap to Surface. It will create a layer under the mouse on the 3D surface that's under the mouse. So if I press and hold the Alt key, and if I click and hold and I drag, you'll see the actual drawing grid and where the drawing will be added from. So I have my character, I've added my 2D layer, and I'll draw some shorts on the character right there, and I'll fill them in. So now he's wearing shorts, he's not indecent anymore. There you go. The other cool thing about this is, let's say I want to add a character inside my scene. I want to draw in a character. I would have to add a 2D layer, draw something, and then position it in 3D space. But this tool really allows me to click and hold. You go anywhere you want. You release. And then when I start drawing on there, if I have my grid enabled, I'll see exactly where I created that layer. This is exactly where I wanted my character to appear. I can draw the character right there. Maybe a little bit taller like this. There we go. And this is how easy it is to add a layer, to add a character, or anything inside your scene. And now this layer is at a specific place in the 3D environment. So even when the camera is moving, the layer stays there. And if I look in the stage view, I rotate, you'll see that this layer is really at this position. It's a flat 2D layer. And the same thing for his shorts, but as long as you're looking through the camera here, doesn't matter. This layer is facing the camera. Now, the other thing that's really cool in this new release is that I was able to add multiple keys to animate my cloud layer inside the 2D panel that I have. I can do the same thing on the 3D character here. So I'll just do a very simple move where I go 2 frames forward. Oop, I need to make sure I enable the animation first. There we go. 2 frames forward, and I have my character moving forward. I can add as many keys as I want and control the position. And you see that since I have the snap to ground feature enabled, my character is always staying on the ground. I don't have to worry about that. So it's very easy to give exactly the proper path that I want to my character. And once I've done that, I'll go and add in the rotation if I need to. I'm just using the dot and comma key to move forward and backward in time. There we go. Now my character is walking and following the path. I may have added way too many controls there, too many keyframes. Maybe I should have added a little bit less. There we go. And I'll have my character walking around inside my 3D set. Now if I want, I have access to the function editor. So with my layer selected here, I have a little button here called Open Function Editor. When I click this, this will add the function editor to my view. And I will be able to manipulate the keyframes. So if I want to change in time, the position time of a keyframe, I can do it from here. So when I select a keyframe inside the function editor, if I press and hold the Alt key, this allows me to change the position in time of that keyframe. That makes sense so far. Are we having good feedback from a lot of questions?
We have a lot of questions, but a lot of great feedback too. So people are very impressed with the dark interface, and they're very impressed with the 3D surface, drawing on a 3D surface. So it's really great. Also, what's nice is that there's a lot of great feedback on the shared layers functionality. So I think up to now, people seem very excited, and there are quite a few questions we'll try our best to answer. Some of them we have to be conscious of the fact that we are only releasing the full, gamut of the release on Monday. So we'll do our best to answer some questions now, if we'd like. So let me just pull up the first one.
Now, while Desi is looking for questions,
lots of great feedback. I'm going through all the nice comments.
I'll show you some more features. So another feature that's new in this release is we have one more mode to display your 3D models. So it's called the shaded. So if I go, not shaded, sorry, washed. So if you want to have your 3D model displayed a little bit washed out, so it doesn't interfere with the rest of your 3D environment, you can select that option from selecting the layer, right-clicking, and selecting washed. You have a question?
Yes, so there's a nice question here from Andreas, and Andreas is asking, how many polygons can I put in the software?
Oh, well, that's a very good question, and it really depends on the hardware that you have. We've been working on a, well, let's see here. Let's look at this armadillo wireframe. Let's look at this armadillo. It's this armadillo, I've been using it in demos for a long time, and it has way too many polygons for what it is. But you'll see that I don't know how many polygons it has, but way too many. I'll turn on back face culling here, so we don't see the ones that are that we see from the back. So you see there's a lot of polygons. I don't know exactly the amount of polygons there. We can do a couple of tests and see if we have something for the next webinar we'll do next week. Good. But really there's there's kind of no limit because it all depends on the hardware that you're running, I guess. And the better the hardware, the faster it will be with all these polygons.
So the next question comes from Ernest, and Ernest wants to know, will all the 3D keyframes and camera moves be exported in FBX format?
Yes, that's been like that in version 4.2, and it's also like that in this one. We have an export command here under File Export FBX, and when I run this command, I get this little dialog here. I can select to export an FBX per scene or an FBX per project. Usually I always do it per scene. And so this will put all the 3D models inside the FBX. All the 2D layers, it will create textures so that you can see them inside your 3D software. It will also export the camera path and the camera, because the camera, not only do we have the path, but you also have the ability to control the focal length, which is, so I need to select the camera frame here. Let's say I select the camera frame here. I have the focal length. So this is a 27 millimeter lens right now, which is not something that you use a lot. You can use 35 or 50. So the focal length will also be exported when you export the FBX.
Cool. Another great question comes from Toron. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. If not, I apologize. Photoreal images can be integrated within sketches or 3D assets?
Sure, you can import images inside Storyboard Pro, no problem. So under the File menu, you have the Import command. And you can import images as scenes or images as layer. And we support PSD format, PNG, JPEGs, TIFF,
right.
BMP, SGI.
Right.
Yeah, so you can import them directly inside Storyboard Pro, and you can decide if you want to vectorize them or if you want to keep them as bitmap images.
And he's also asking, how can we board for a 360-degree camera sequence?
I guess you rotate your camera. That's a very, I guess there's no problem because you just rotate the camera. You can position the pivot wherever you want. And let's say I go in my stage view here and I look at my scene from above. And we do see the camera moving right here. I'm turn off the model. There we go. And you can actually just select the camera and move it and rotate it. So if you want to do a 360 rotation, you can do it, but I would rather move the pivot first, like this. And you can do a rotation like that, and you will have your camera rotating, and there's no issue. Just make sure you rotate around the right pivot. I could rotate around the armadillo right here. I would need to take the camera away. There we go. I reset the camera. I move the camera backwards. I move the pivot right here. I can add a keyframe at the start of my panel, add a keyframe at the end, and I'll just do it in 90-degree turn, like this. Let's see what it does in the camera view. I'm just rotating around the 3D model. So you can do whatever you want with the camera. You can manipulate on all the axes. You can manipulate from the stage view. You can manipulate from the top view. You also have a top view you can add inside your project. You can manipulate from the side view if you want. There's really no limit to the camera move that you can do.
Cool, thanks. Melissa wants to know, if you change the layer order on one layer that has share drawing, will all of them move to that order?
So when I'm on a panel, each panel has their own layer order. So if I change the order on this panel, this won't affect the other panels. Though the layer inside the drawing, because when I'm drawing in vector, every stroke that I make is on a different layer. If I change the ordering of these vector drawings on the same layer, this will be reflected on the other ones. But the layers here, now this is not shared, this is per panel. Yeah.
So the next question is also really interesting. Can I import match moving camera data into Storyboard Pro 5?
That's a very good question. Probably not in the state that we are right now. We'll need to check with the R&D team here. I know we can export the camera using scripting. We have access to the functions. We might be able to import data using the scripting and apply it to the camera peg. So there's a peg on the camera that allows us to move the camera around in the 3D environment. So I would need to check if we have access to that through the scripting. That's something we can look for the next webinar.
That's great. We'll cover that next week, next Thursday in our webinar. Peter has a good question too. Can you lock the transparency of the layers?
Lock the transparency of the layers. Well, you can change the transparency of a layer. So if I change the transparency of this layer here, maybe to 50%, so this character is now 50% transparent. I'm not sure what you mean about lock, because the layer will now be always 50% transparent. So
I think that would answer the question in this case. Dave wants to know, can boards be exported to Avid?
Yes, so we have a lot of export formats available inside Storyboard Pro. So if you're under File, Export, we have EDL, AF, and XML that's available. And when you export to those formats, here you can select which format you want to export to. And it will generate movie files if you want, or copy the audio if you want. So what it does, it will render every scene into a movie file, and it will lay it out with the proper timing inside the AAF. It will also take all the audio that you have in your project. So I haven't touched any of the audio functionalities of Storyboard Pro yet, but it will copy all the audio from your project and put them inside the AAF.
Cool.
With the proper timing.
Very cool. Can you link vector or bitmap layers to a 3D layer?
Linking, like attaching.
Yeah.
What you would do is you would put them in a group together, and you would animate the group. So if you move the group, both the 2D and the 3D layer will move together.
Cool. Another question, does it support DPX? Can we generate a full-fledged Previz from the software?
So exporting to DPX is not something we do in Storyboard Pro. Importing from DPX either. I'll see if we have this in our list of features for the future. As for doing, it all depends on the detail, the amount of detail you want to do in your Previz, right? You can import 3D models, you can animate the models, and move the models around. You cannot go and animate like a full IK rig. You can select individual parts of your model, like let's say I go here. Actually, this armadillo I don't think is broken up into different parts, but my set is here. So I can select, well, all these columns are together. So you can select individual portions of your model and you can move them around. This does not animate them. If you want to animate them, you need to break them apart into separate layers. So you can do separate sub-objects. So I can animate the columns independently from the set. So you can do a lot. It all depends on the amount of details you want to have in your Previz.
So we've had a couple questions about what the estimated release date is for Storyboard Pro 5. So we will say that we are releasing on Monday. Depending where you are in the universe, you'd have to check into our website probably, let's say, by early afternoon or mid-morning to see what all the release features entail. And then we'll be hosting a webinar on Thursday where you can basically see what new features are really out there, and really probe Marc-André for more questions. I'm sure he'll enjoy that. Also, don't forget you can download, as of Monday, you'll be able to download a trial, and we will be sending you emails regarding your upgrades and any information you'd like from Monday onwards. We'll obviously be more than happy to answer your questions. So we're doing our best now to answer as many questions as possible. So we hope you're enjoying this. And another great question is about deformation. So basically, is deformation possible with transform?
Deformation with transform. Well, so when you have the transform tool selected on a 2D layer, you can scale the layer, you can rotate the layer, and that's pretty much it. You can move the layer around. You don't have any ability to deform like you can do using Harmony, the curve deformers and the bone deformers. And it's the same thing when you're working with 3D models. You can scale the 3D model on XYZ axis individually if you want. You can rotate them on XYZ axis, move them on XYZ axis, but you don't have the ability to deform more than that, the 3D model. Now, one thing I haven't touched is the animatic aspect. We're still working hard on our demo material for the next release, and I wasn't able to use it today. But I do have some old demo material some of you might recognize from a long time ago, just to show you what a finished board would look like inside Storyboard Pro. So let me just start by looking at the thumbnails here. And when I go through the thumbnails, I'm using the F key to scroll through and the A key to go back. You can see that I have the action notes for each of my panels. I have dialogues in each of my panels. So the board is started in this mode where you create all the panels with all the different layers. Once you have all the drawings done, you can go in your timeline view. And if you want to start doing your animatic, you can time all the panels. So if I click and drag between two panels, I can extend the panel or reduce the duration of the panel. Or if I press and hold the Alt key, I can just change the two panels that are adjacent, like an A-B roll. So it shrinks one and expands the other one. I'm going to scrub through my timeline here, and let me find a portion where there's a lot of sound. And I can even have some sound. So if I enable playback of the sound, I hit play.
No, by the hair of my chinny chin chin.
And there was one. There we go. And I can even turn on scrubbing like this. So if I really want to time something to the wave, I can just use the scrubbing to hear the wave. There's other editing functionalities I have on the sounds. I can actually split the sound into if I want. So if I select the sound and select right click, I can split the sound and move it separately. And I can extend the exposure or reveal what's before or after. So after I split the sound is not really modified. I still have the complete sound wave behind. So I can still go and expose a portion of the sound. I can show the volume, so I can actually increase and decrease the sound volume of a specific sound. You get rid of that. And if at one point I realize that I'm missing a sound, or I'm missing, or that the track is not good, I can actually record a new track. So I just select a sound here, sound track. I'll right click and I'll say record sound. So there's a track missing. I need to do a scratch file. I'll press the record button. Little pig, let me come in. And that's my great acting. So this is the wolf. There we go. And you can look at the playback. Little pig, let me come in. Hey, that's not so bad. And the current soundtrack, current frame, I click OK, and this imports the sound directly inside my timeline. And since this is a scratch file, this is not a really professionally recorded and surely not professionally acted dialogue, I'll select it and I'll set it to a color. Maybe it's orange. So any sound that's orange inside my track is something that needs to be re-recorded. So you can tag sounds or even panels inside your project. So this is just a glimpse of all the functionalities that you have in Storyboard Pro 5 and in Storyboard Pro in general. There's a lot more to discover. And yeah, I hope we can cover more next time.
We definitely will, and we have more questions, and again, we apologize for not being able or running out of time to answer them, but we will answer them in the next webinar, and we will be doing also a third webinar to answer further questions. What I will share with you now, all in the group chat, is the link to register for the official webinar on Thursday. So I'll share it with all of you right now, and now you can basically register for Thursday's webinar, and Marc-André and I will be back on Thursday to discuss all the features and come back to our website hopefully Monday mid-morning or early afternoon East Coast time, so you can see all the really cool features that we've brought into Storyboard Pro version 5.
All right, so that's it for today.
So thank you, Marc-André. We're really excited, and there's lots of great feedback that I will share with the team in R&D as soon as we get off this webinar. And once again, Thursday's webinar will also be at 2 p.m. Eastern time. So check back in with us then, or register for the webinar with the link we just shared with you now.
All right, thank you everybody for joining us today, and I'll hope to see you next week.